Okay, welcome to our Erev Shabbat Parashat class, Parashat Shemot. New Sefer Shemot, Parashat Shemot, and the question today is, what triggered the Geulah? What began redemption? And I say that because the Ramban calls the book of Shemot, every Sefer has at least one nickname, but conceptually, the Ramban has nicknames in terms of thematic nicknames, you can say, to every Sefer, and he calls it the Sefer HaGeulah, the book of redemption. And with all the drama in this parasha, the dramatic events, of course, we can relate immediately to the scene of the burning bush, the very deep and long conversation that Moshe Rabbeinu had with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the you can say wild scene by the hotel and the Brit Milah. Moshe Rabbeinu is eventually coming and confronting Paro. With all these conversations and confrontations, there is a very inconspicuous, under the radar, not even a scene, just a, by the way, mentioning of something in the parasha that indeed is the trigger, is the catalyst for Geulah. So let's talk about what this means, the book of Geulah. You know, Sefer Bereshit, the Ramban called Sefer Haisirah, the book of creation, not just because creation took place, but the purposes of creation. The objective of creation had its seeds planted with a Kadosh Baruch Hu identifying people, finally, who got the point, who understood the reason for creation, recognized him. Because of that, they were selected, and everything that they did in their lifetime was a foreshadowing, alluded to, events to come for their descendants, talking about the Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, of course, and their lives symbolize the future lives of their children and their nation to be. And so, as that book closes out, piggybacking those symbolic events of the lifetime of the forefathers are the real events that play out in the actual real redemption of Am Yisrael. And redemption means that we saw Galut, we saw exile already in Parashat Vayigash when the family went down to Egypt. They remained there. They were there for hundreds of years. And although the suffering was not as vast quantitatively as was offered and predicted to Abraham Avinu in Brit Ben HaBetarim of 400 years, or 430, it was shrunk with great mercy and compassion from Hashem, but qualitatively the suffering was there. And so we are ripe, we are ready for the other part of that prophecy to come true, to Abraham Avinu, and that is that your children will be redeemed. And thus, this is the book that demonstrate that process of redemption. And redemption means not just the miraculous events of Yetziat Mitzrayim and the post-Yetziat Mitzrayim supernatural events, i.e. Kriyat Yam Suf, and then afterwards followed by our purpose as a nation, which was Matan Torah, but eventually also that sealing of the relationship between us and Hashem, and that is the Mishkan. That takes us through all the way to the very end of Shemot, rounding out the Geulah, thus the book of redemption. So if this is the book of redemption, we need to point to an event which triggered the redemption. What started it? Now, why does it need a starter? God, you promised Abraham. It means it's coming eventually. In fact, we even had a time that it's coming. And yet, when was that process going to start? Obviously, the process was going to precede the end game. Redemption was not going to be at the last moment of 400 years with no events preceding the actual redemption. So the question is, when does it start? But more poignantly, that we're going to focus on today is, why did it start? What event was the catalyst to begin with the redemption of the Jewish people? And redemption and any acts of God that are out of the ordinary, that are supernatural, that are miraculous, and seem niflaot, as we say, requires some starting point. Not because HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs it, but because he bounces it off us, so to speak. Just as with berachot, there's a source for beracha, there's got to be something, a foundation from which HaKadosh Baruch Hu then uses, so to speak, to exponentially spread and grow his beracha. So too with redemption and salvation for Am Yisrael. Hashem is going to wait for us to make our move before he makes his. He's waiting for a starting point. So that's the question. Where was that starting point? And I point to, as I said, a very inconspicuous, you can't even call it an event, but we will, and a pasuk. The pasuk begins in Perek Bet, chapter 2 of the book of Shemot, pasuk Aleph, and it very simply says, without any details, Vayelech ish mibet Levi, vayikach et bat Levi. And a man from the house of the Levites, let's take that to mean the tribe of Levi went, Vayelech, he went, and he took. Let's assume the term, the verb, vayikach, and he took, means more like he acquired. And let's assume that vis-a-vis a woman, as we know, it says in the Torah, vayikach ish isha ba'aleha, that the term used to acquire a woman or to get married is vayikach. So therefore, let's assume this means that a man from the tribe of Levi went and he acquired or he married a woman from the tribe of Levi. So not only is that ho-hum, but we're not told who is doing the taking and who is the recipient of the taking, who's the parties of the marriage. And furthermore, we're not even sure why it's being framed in this manner. Why we need to be told that people get married. We know that people get married. And what is the Vayelech all about? And he went. You don't say that. You just say Vayikach. And he married someone. Now, of course, the mystery of the anonymity here, the fact that it's anonymous, is not so profound, because we are able very easily to figure out as the story continues, and this woman ended up hiding this child, and when she could no longer hide this child, she made the little teba, the miniature the ark or boat, if you will, and put him in the river, the Nile River. We know it's Moshe Rabbeinu. And because of the continuation of the Parashat, and we're being informed who his parents were, Amram and Yocheved. So we work our way back afterwards in retrospect, and we figure out that this Ish and this Isha were the parents, none other than the parents of Moshe Rabbeinu and Aharon and Miriam, namely Amram and Yocheved. So that's not a mystery. We would like to know why they weren't named over here. That would be nice. But we also want to know, why bother? Why is this significant enough to talk about? The Torah does mention marriages. This person married that person, but not events of the marriage, and not always does it mention the marriage. And really our point would be, we want to write, to get to the fact that they got married. Let's say getting married was significant. They got married, they had a child, descendancy is what we're concerned ourselves with. So let's try to rephrase the pasuk, even leaving out the names for a moment. Vayikach ish isha. How about that? Or ish mibet Levi nasa isha. Right? A Levite married a woman. Right? What's with the drama? Vayelech ish mibet Levi. A man from the tribe of Levi went. There you go. He went on a date, right? And he married a woman from Bet Levi. What's with the bet, by the way? How about Milevi? It's a tribe. It's the house of Levi, right? And how about getting back to why so anonymous here? We're going to figure out anyway who they are. So let's reform the pasuk again. Amram nasa Yocheved. Beautiful way to start the book, right? They got married. So ambiguous. Now, okay, those are fair questions, but why do I say that this indeed is the trigger of Geulah? What does that have to do with redemption? So let's put some context here. First of all, we do know that there are Midrashim, Hachamim tell us that it's possible, there are different opinions, that Amram was married to Yochebed, and later he had to separate from her, perhaps even divorce her, for reasons beyond his control, which we'll get to in a moment. And he, in this pasuk being indicated, is that he retook her, he remarried her. In fact, there's another midrash mentioned by the Mefarshim, that it was Miriam, the daughter, who had to convince him, made that. Don't you think it's the right thing, right? Maybe she set it up, the flowers there, candle, who knows what Miriam did, right? And got him back together. There was, we know of no fight, we know no friction, we know no reason for separation. What we do know is the context. We know that these was the most difficult times for people to try to keep a family structure, to grow families. We're not only talking about a time of suffering and persecution and oppression, physical hardship. We're talking about a time, as we know from the previous Pesukim that precede this one, that they were throwing babies into the river. They were murdering babies. So could you imagine a husband and wife planning the idea of her getting pregnant and having a baby, knowing that the chances of the baby living were nil? What are couples to do? What are husbands and wives to do? Are they even allowed to attempt to have a child? That's a halachic discussion. The child's going to die. And so we understand from what Hachamim are telling us that it could be because of the primary reason for marriage is having children. Not being able to have children is difficult, but maybe even being married without attempting to have children is simple. For that reason, perhaps couples were actually separating, if not divorcing. This was a matter of survival. Now, that is a possible scenario. There are others that say that that's not what happened, and this was an original marriage. This was an original marriage. After all, we had already Miriam and Aaron who were already living from this couple. And if you do the math, we're told actually Yochebed might have been quite an elderly woman. And so what the Torah tells us, and we're going to focus on three words. First of all, whether or not it was a remarriage and a decision was made or an original marriage, either way, there was a mighty and brave decision made and conclusion arrived at that we're going to get married. And the word vayelech that Ramban points out is a word that is used when something remarkable happens. It can be remarkably negative. We saw vayelech Reuben, he did something maybe not so nice with Bilhah. We've seen other vayelechs that were positive, negative. But when something remarkable, something that is out of the ordinary occurs, we're told vayelech, not necessarily meaning walking or traveling, but somebody making a decision to do something that requires certainly bravery, certainly going out of the norm, and certainly taking a great initiative. It can be positive and negative, and here we are super focused on the positive. Vayelech. Added on to that, the Emek Davar says that Vayelech indicates to us actually going off. You know, they say off the derech, right? Yeah. Off the road, off task, doing something that's ridiculously different. Everybody is divorcing. Everybody is separating. No one is even considering. Forget about conceiving children, even being together with your wife. And this person, this Amram, these people, this Yochebed, take a step back and they tell themselves as follows: is they're winning. They're winning. They're beating us down with all the oppression and all the whipping and all the killing and the murdering. With all that, they didn't get to us. And now they're getting to us. And they're allowing us to get to ourselves and take down the family unit. Said Amram, said Yocheved to each other, to their family, and to the rest of the world, they won't break us. They won't break us, and we won't give up our way of life. Vayelech ish. Through all this, with all the difficulty, and against the tide, and out of the ordinary, and actually off, Vayelech, going off and differently than everyone else, they got married. They did the exact opposite that everybody else was doing. And I'll tell you how much the Torah wants to point out that what Amram did was incredibly courageous. Because what's the next word? We could have been told it's Amram. There's no secret. We're going to figure it out in a few Pesukim. It's Amram. Instead, the Torah used this word, Vayelech Ish. We know so well what Ish stands for. But there's something incredibly remarkable about the word Ish vis-a-vis the tribe of Levi, very specifically. Because when else do we see this great word used? Well, we can fast forward into history, but we just have to go really a chapter later when Moshe Rabbeinu gets a little bit older and he goes to see his brothers and their difficulty, and he sees one, the famous scene, fighting another, and it says, "Vayarish Misri Makesh Ish Avim Me'achad Vayifen Kor V'Achor." He turns this way and that way. Vayar Ki En Ish. Now the pshat is he's looking around to see, is anyone watching me? I'm about to beat the heck out of this Egyptian. Who knows what's going to happen to him? Anyone around? And Ish, coast is clear. Let's get him. But really, what's the word Bayad? What can the word Bayad mean? We know with Abraham Avinu, with the angel, it says Bayad a second time. Bayad also means he understood. Vayifen Kor V'Achor. Moshe Rabbeinu was like, does anybody care over here? Where's the justice? There are people being beaten to death. No one's opening their mouth. Vayifen Kor V'Achor Vayad Ki En Ish. No one cares. No one's lifting a finger. I'll be an Ish. I'll be an Ish. An Ish, that it's me. Says Pirkei Avot, B'makom she'en anashim hishtadeh lihiyot Ish. If no one else is doing the job, then by all means, you get up and take initiative, and you do it. And we know that his great nephew, many years later, in the desert, in Parashat Pinehas, in that incredible scene where Pinehas lifted the sword and did his very courageous act in killing that couple together. And of course, because of that, the plague of Am Yisrael and the anger of Hashem was subsided. And and he got great reward for it. It says, Vayad Pinehas, he saw, and he lifted himself mitoch ha'edah. He saw means he understood that nothing else was being done. No one was lifting a finger. Vayakom, he extracted himself. He stood out among everybody else. And we know, of course, in the Heta Agil, the very same tribe, when we know what was going on during that terrible scene of the golden calf. And says Moshe Rabbeinu, Mila Hashem Elai, is there anybody who's going to stand up over here? It's in the blood. It runs through the veins of this tribe to be Anashim. Where did it start with? The father Amram. Vayelech, out of the ordinary, brave and bold, Ish. He decided, if no one else is lifting a finger, it's time to do something. Am I risking my life? 100%. Will this child live? I have no idea. But if not me, then who? And finally, the third word is the third word in a row. Vayelech Ish mi bet Levi. Not Shevet Levi, or what we would expect, just plain Levi. Mi bet Levi. Because it's just that institution that Amram and Yocheved were trying to preserve. It's the bet. It's the family structure. It's the family unit. If they allow us to be discouraged, if they take us down and our family unit starts to disintegrate, it is all over. Because Am Yisrael, the bedrock, the foundation of Am Yisrael, begins with the family unit. The mother, the father, the children, and the generation, descendants take it from there. And it's for that reason that they, this incredibly holy, brave, and courageous couple, stood out and did what they did. And as Rabbi Hirsch says it, it's in that word Vayelech, it's within that lies the whole great resolution that was necessary in these great times for bringing on redemption. This was the start of redemption, such an innocent pasuk, such an inconspicuous event, so beneath the radar. Look how things begin, and how Torah Kedushah points it out, in ways that don't stand out so much, that aren't the miracles and wonders in the supernatural. It's just the act of courage of a man and a woman standing up for what's right and knowing that if great things are to come, it's got to start somewhere. And Amram and Yocheved picked up the slack by Yelech. They did what was right. And the rest is history, as they say. Moshe, redemption, and the start of Geulah Sheleman. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen. Shabbat shalom.